Welcome to the Bringing the Farm to School Agriculture Producers Training Southeast Regional Facilitators Workshop. We're excited over the next 4 afternoons to spend with you exploring the ins and outs of farm to school. We have a great amount of material to share with you all, engaging in activities to jump in, as well as several special guests and speakers with us this week. On that note, I'm actually going to turn it over to Joy Nolan, who is the regional lead for the Southeastern USDA region. Joy?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad you decided to join us today and have the opportunity to cultivate your teams for your regional offices, for your state agencies, bring everybody together and see how we can cultivate this relationship to build these great teams to support our producers across the region. So I'd like to welcome you guys today. I'm so glad you're here. And I hope that you guys take everything you gained today and throughout the week and use that knowledge. Feel free to loop me in to any of your discussions if you'd like. And we can carry on after this week. So thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks for the welcome and introduction, Joy. My name's Tammy Howard, and I am from the National Center for Appropriate Technology, joining you from, believe it or not, snowy Montana. And you will get to know several other NCAT staff over the next few days. We have Devonna Bell, the Bringing the Farm to School Program Manager, joining us from Virginia today, and several other agriculture specialists from NCAT, including Robert Maggiani from Texas, Margot Hale from Arkansas, and Andy Pressman from New Hampshire that will be joining us off and on to help explain the curriculum content over the next several days. So the National Center for Appropriate Technology is a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to help people build resilient communities through local and sustainable solutions that reduce poverty, strengthen self-reliance, and protect natural resources. Much of NCAT's work focuses on building sustainable farming and food systems throughout the US. And NCAT is based in Butte, Montana, with regional offices throughout the country. We'd like to start by recognizing the project partners on the call, in addition to our staff from the National Center for Appropriate Technology, which I'm going to probably start referring to as NCAT because it is such a mouthful from here on out. You will see folks from the USDA Food and Nutrition Service Office of Community Food Systems, like we just had Joy greet us, and 6 staff members from the National Farm to School Network are zooming in from across the country. They are, all of us are project partners and have been working to create the content and this training for you all today. And with that, I'm gonna pass this along to Tomas to talk a bit about the National Farm to School Network and their role in this project. Tomas?
Great, thank you. Yeah, and for those who just joined, again, my name is Tomas Delgado, Program Manager with the National Farm to School Network. And I'd like to take time to just recognize the NFSN team for all of their hard work that made this project come to life. We have Jenny Lee Harris and Lacey Stevens, who really just took charge and built the curriculum team and all the curriculum materials that many of you have received leading up to this training. So just want to take a moment to acknowledge them. And then, of course, our partners at NCAT and our partners with the USDA FNS office. The National Farm to School Network is an information, advocacy, and networking hub for communities working to bring local food sourcing, school gardens, and food and agricultural education into schools and early care education settings. You'll have the opportunity to get to know many of these partners over the next 3 days. And so we'd also like to thank our advisory council. We had a project advisory council that met up monthly during the curriculum development stages of the project, offering thought partnership, feedback on curriculum, as well as just really offering a continued amount of expertise given to the workshop planning phase and the grounding of the program itself. They've provided best practices as well as just other support when working with training producers. So we really want to thank them for that. We'd also like to just, really extend our appreciation to their dedication and contributions to the project as well.
So now let's learn about who's joining us as attendees today and through the week. So based on the information shared during registration, we have attendees from across the Southeast, and you can see here the breakdown of attendees by state. So we have 4 folks from Alabama, 8 from Florida, 3 from Georgia, 10 from Kentucky, 3 from Mississippi, and a whopping 13 from North Carolina, and 2 from South Carolina, and 4 joining us from Tennessee. And on the next slide, there's a breakdown of participants by type of organization. So we can see we have 11 of our participants are from university extension programs. 15 are from state agencies, mainly from the Departments of Agriculture and Education. 16 of our participants today are from nonprofits, primarily including producer support organizations. And 4 has selected other, including different farm organizations and local government. We are really excited to have you all here today and throughout the week, and we thank you for your support and your participation, and also your time this week. We understand we're asking a lot of you for 4 hours for 4 days throughout this week, but we are excited to have you participate and spend the next 4 days with you.
Yeah, so just want to move on to the goals of the Regional Facilitator Workshop. So thanks again for you all for being here and participating in this training. The overall goal for bringing together this training is to really just group representatives in state agencies, extension offices, and producer support organizations that are interested in training producers and selling to schools in their respective states. And then ultimately just to form state teams moving forward following this training. Exploring the bringing the farm to school training materials and providing an overview of the module content is really what we're trying to achieve in these next 4 days. So we'll spend a great amount of time really delving into the curriculum material that you all may have received in the mail. It's also available digitally, and we'll show you how to access that as well if you have not yet received it. The second objective of this week is really to help you all develop an action plan for each of your respective states and to use that plan as a blueprint for planning the local producer trainings moving forward. Additionally, another goal of this week is to learn from producers in each of your states and to get a sense of what school sales will look like in each of your states as well. And then lastly, another goal is to provide opportunities for state teams to really work together. You'll spend a lot of time with your state groups within the breakout sessions that we all have lined up for you. And there you'll be able to get a sense of who's at the table and how to move forward with the planning of the producer trainings within your respective states.
So most of you have received an agenda in the packet. I'm gonna hold this up, but I'm not sure all of you can see me, but the green pocket folder that y'all received in via FedEx last week. And so the agenda is designed to reflect the workshop goals that Tomas just talked about and to keep you engaged with plenty of opportunities to interact with the project content, with each other, and with your state team members. So today we are spending some time introducing the training program and the trainer's toolkit content. In the second half of today's workshop, we'll have a panel featuring Glenn Holmes from New North Florida Growers Co-op and Tom Gladney, a grower with that co-op. On days 2 and 3, we'll be focusing on the producer training curriculum content. You'll gain a better understanding of the content you'll be delivering to producers, and there will be ongoing opportunities to work with fellow members of your state and state teams. And then on day 4, we'll be taking a virtual site visit to Need More Acres Farm and have the opportunity to chat with Michelle Hell from Need More Acres. We'll also spend some time with the planning and outreach guide and go through the training evaluation process.
So adapting this workshop to the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely brought a level of complexity to farm to school, and providing this training as well as just working and connecting with producers. We have spent the last 6 months adapting all of the content and training approaches to meet the needs of this current situation. We understand that this is not the ideal format to be conducting this type of training, but we've also seen incredible resilience and innovation during this time, and know that this work must continue. We have built in a lot of opportunities to interact throughout the workshop, as well as daily 15-minute breaks with additional 5-minute breaks between each transition. So we know virtual trainings can be challenging, so please feel free to step away and take care of yourself as needed. And lastly, one major adaptation, of course, is our virtual platform that we're using today. I'd like to turn it over to Tracy to just help us navigate using this virtual training technology.
Thanks, Tomas. Hi, everybody. I am Tracy Starkovich. I'm the Operations and Events Manager with the National Farm to School Network. And today I'm your tech tour guide. So most of you are probably already quite familiar with Zoom after this last year, but I'm going to run through just a few tech things for you to get you really familiar and comfortable with the tools we're using today. So first off, I want to go ahead and invite you to rename yourself if you haven't done so already. So you can click in the arrow box in the top corner of your individual Zoom box and select rename, and you can change it to represent your name, your organization, and your pronouns for us. And then we're highly encouraging you to access the meeting via video. There's going to be lots of interaction, lots of things to be looking at. So please do use your video and have your video on as much as you feel comfortable with. If you do need to call in and are also using your video at the same time, just make sure that you enter the participant ID of the meeting when calling in by phone, because this will sync your video with your phone number, so it doesn't look like there's two of you. And this is really important for breakout groups, because you will need to go both in video and audio form to your breakout group when the time comes for that. Of course, muting yourself when you're not speaking to avoid background noise and feedback. And then a few other things that we'll be using within Zoom in this meeting. We do have closed captioning turned on right now. You should see it on the bottom of your screen here. If you do see it, that's great. If you don't see it, you want to click on the live transcript button and select show subtitles. If you do not want to see it, you can select hide subtitles if you would like. And then you can also, there's a view full transcript option, which will make it like a pop-out box, just like it is like the chat feature. If you want to read like word for word, the entire transcript will be there. So you can check that out to see the transcript of the call. You can also change your screen views at the top right of your screen. You can select side by side with either gallery or speaker view. So if you want to just see the speaker, you can turn that on. If you want to see a couple more faces, you can add the gallery view. And then also, this is a fun tip that I literally just learned last week. If you hover over in between the screen that's being shared and the list of speakers, a little line will pop up and you can slide that line to the right or left to see more or less people. So that's kind of fun. We will also be using the chat function. You can go ahead and introduce yourself there in the chat function if you haven't done so already, but also feel free to use chat for any questions that you don't want to hold for designated Q&A times. We will be using the raise hand function during Q&A times, and we'll be unmuting people as well if you want to actually speak during those times. But you can also toss questions in that chat box. We have some folks monitoring the chat, so we will answer questions that we can quickly, or we'll be holding them for a Q&A time for different speakers. We are recording this, so we're just notifying you of that. If you have a concern, please connect with myself or Lacey about that. We are going to be using breakout groups, so this is going to be really interactive. You're going to have lots of time to talk amongst your state groups. So when we get to those breakout times, we will alert you, and then you will just click join your room when you get that pop-up. If for some reason you get sent to the wrong room or you're not sent in a room, just let me know. I can see who's not in a room yet, and I will assist you to get you to the correct room. You want to stay in your room until the pop-up asks you to return, unless there is some issue and you need to come back to the main room for a question. You will all have facilitators in your group, so they should be able to answer questions within the breakout sessions. And I can send messages, so you might see like a time warning message sent via chat, but otherwise the individual group chats stay within your breakout group. So that's something you can use as well when you're in breakouts. We are going to be doing some live polls during the meeting. So you'll see a pop-up on your window where you can take the poll. Please do so when they do pop up. We won't close them until we have 100% participation. You should still be able to use them if you're accessing us from a phone or other mobile device, but if you have trouble, you can just message me and I'll see if I can get that access for you. And then lastly, feel free to reach out to me individually directly in the chat function, or you can also text me at 630-207-3855. I can pop that in the chat here in a second. And it should also be in your participant home base. If you have any tech issues during the training, that will be the quickest way to get a hold of me, because I won't be looking at emails or other communication, just the chat and text. So make sure you're checking out that participant home base, and I'm excited about the next couple of days together, and please let me know if I can help you. I am now going to toss it back to Lacey to talk about the participant home base a little bit further.
Thanks, Tracy. So in your prep emails, you all got this link, but we're going to add it into the chat box as well. But an important place for you to be able to access throughout this training is going to be your participant home base. And so in this document, you'll be able to find the agenda, and we'll make any updates to the agenda as we go. If we have to tweak some times, we'll make sure that that's all updated in that agenda and that participant home base. We'll also have all the links to the good documents and resources that you'll be using throughout the next 4 days. So that includes your state Jamboard. So as you saw in your prep emails, each state has their own Jamboard, and we're going to be asking you to be able to access those throughout the next 4 days and to work together collaboratively on those Jamboards. So that's how you'll be able to best access those Jamboards each time, is through that participant home base. This is also a great place to access the virtual versions of all the resources. You'll have the links right there to all the virtual versions of the resources that you had got in the mail in that hard copy. And so we'll just make sure that you have this participant home base up and ready. Let me get that link in the chat box for you to make sure that you can continue to access it. And that's going to be an important place for you to be able to continue to go throughout the training. So So another important component that you will want to be able to continue to access are your state Jamboards, as I said. And I am going to share a sample Jamboard here so we can give a little tutorial for folks who may not have used their Jamboards yet. So let me switch my screen here. And we're going to look at a Jamboard and a little how-to. So every state is going to have a Jamboard that's going to look like this. Every state has their own version. And to use Jamboard, it's a really fun way for people to be able to work together at the same time, for people to be able to share ideas. And we'll just go over some of the key things you're going to want to know about the Jamboard. So one of our first activities, some folks may have done this already, is to share your Farm to School in Action photo. And to post a new photo, here is all your tools over here on the left-hand side. To post a photo, you are going to click this Add Image button. This Add Image button, it looks like a little picture of mountains, and then that's going to open up a dialog for you to be able to select an image from your computer and upload it. So that's one way you'll be able to share your Farm to School in Action photo. Other functions you're going to want to know how to use are the Post-it function. So this sticky note in the middle here, when you select a sticky note, we'll be able to type a sample here, save, and it'll pop up on your screen. So that's how you're going to add notes and sticky notes when you get to the activities within your group Jamboards. You can also add text. This text box with the T in the box for text box is another way that you can add content to your slides through the Jamboard. And you can change the color of that text if you have a different background. So those are the main functions you're going to be using on those Jamboards, are the Post-it notes, the photos once in a while, and that text option. So the next item that we're going to be using to get some more interactivity with everybody are our polling options. So we do have a test poll here, so you all can see what that is going to look like when it comes up for you. Tracy, do you want to launch our first test polling here? So Tracy has launched our poll questions. They're also, you can see those on the PowerPoint slide as well, but it should have popped up a little window for you. I see some folks answering. So the first two questions we have for you to get to know where you all are a little bit is around how many producer trainings you've conducted. If this might be your first producer training that you're delving into and you're just learning about it, or to know that you're an old hand and have been training producers for as long as you can remember. The second question is around when you would anticipate, if you all are in your state are looking to do a local producer training, when you would anticipate doing that. Is that going to be coming up very quickly? Is it going to take some time for you to get ready in the 3 to 6 months or 6 to 12 months? Or you're still really exploring your options, not quite sure yet? We'll give it a few more seconds here. We've got about 75% of folks with their votes in. All right, Tracy, if you would close the poll and share results, we'll see a little bit and learn a little bit more about where everybody is. So it looks like we've got a lot of folks who bringing the farm to school would be one of their first producer training. So great opportunity to start to connect with producers. And it looks like most folks are not sure yet when they might do a local producer training. So great to know where everybody is in their consideration and their planning process. We will stop sharing. So those are really the tech components, the resources that you all are going to need to really participate and make the most of this training together. So if you have any questions about any of those resources or any of the tech or Zoom options, please connect with myself or Tracy. You can send us, again, a private chat or via phone number. You should all have our phone numbers in that participant home base. So I'm going to turn it over to Tomas to continue our introductions.
Great, thank you. So next, we would like to touch on some proposed agreements and expectations, which all can be found on page 7 and 8 from the Facilitator's Guide. So we want to touch on just what group agreements and expectations could look like, and we want to do so in acknowledging that ideally community agreements would be co-constructed, but while we're here right now, I'd like to just share some examples to just start us off with. firstly, just want to acknowledge the gender, race, class, and heteronormative power dynamics within the room, as well as the difference in farm size, experience level among producers. Next, we'd like to just encourage folks to, one voice at a time. So just make room for folks to all share their thoughts, which leads me to the next guideline. Take space, make space. If you're a shyer person, please take space for yourself. If you're more of an extroverted person, please make space for others. Next, we'd like to just avoid industry language. So keep terms and language accessible to all as best you can. And next, just want to acknowledge that no one knows everything, but together we know a lot. Also to stay mentally and physically present. And lastly, please, we encourage you to turn on your cameras. And if you're able to, come off mute and share your thoughts. We want to really try and cultivate as much of a in-person feeling here virtually as we can. So if you are able to, just come off of mute when you can to interact and share yourself through turning on your cameras. So yeah, next we'd like to just hear some additional agreements that you all may have right now. If you believe there are agreements that should be added to that list, please let us know. You can share them in the chat, as well as unmute yourself and share right now. So we're going to take the next 2 minutes to give you all space to share any kind of thoughts or reflections or recommendations for guidelines.
I'll chime in. I would say some patience and grace with the technical space, as people may take a little longer to hit reactions and drop in the chat and know how to toggle between functions. So that's one thing I picked up on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lauren.
Maybe related to Lauren's is permission to speak in rough draft, just the comfort level to explore one's own thoughts collectively with the group.
Great point, Tessa. Thank you. All right, well, we'll move on, but if you want to revisit those group agreements, you can do so on the participant home base, as well as page 7 and 8 in the facilitator's guide. Next, I'll pass it to Lacey to take a deeper dive into breakout sessions and how those will flow within the week.
Great, thanks, Tomas. So we are getting ready to go into our first group breakout sessions, and you'll be going in to breakout groups with your states. There are a couple of states that we have smaller numbers, so those are combined, but we do have flexibility to make those changes throughout. So you'll have a facilitator in each room working through these ideas with you, working through the Jamboard with you. Tracy is working behind the scenes to get these texts set up. So when we're ready to go into our rooms, you'll just see a little box pop up that says you are being sent to this room. You push the button and you'll be whisked away into your room. So if you end up in the wrong room, you can come back to the main room and we'll get you put in the right place. So the purpose of this first breakout session is really to connect with folks who are here from your state. Find an opportunity to, one, find out who is here from your state, and you're going to get to know a little bit more about where they are when it comes to producer trainings, what their interests are, and what their goals are for this time together in these next 4 days. So your facilitators are going to be walking you through some prompt questions using those Jamboards, and it's a great opportunity to kind of kick off and get everybody on the same page and learn about where people are coming from as you jump into these next 4 days, where you're going to continue to be put into those groups, those state groups. So in general, as we go through these next 4 days, we're going to be talking a lot about what producer trainings could look like in your state. We're going to have opportunities to reflect on the materials that we're sharing with you, the Bringing the Farm to School curriculum materials that we're sharing with you. we're also going to be creating opportunity for you to think about what a local producer training might look like in your state. And we want to acknowledge that we know states are in different places in thinking about this. This might be your first exposure to the Bringing the Farm to School training. You might just be here to kind of learn more about what it is and think about how you can bring it to your work. Or there might be other states who are really have a vision in mind for what a local producer training will look like and when it's going to happen. So you'll be working with your facilitator in your breakout rooms, and that's totally fine wherever you are and wherever folks from your state are. So that breakout group time is really to explore these resources and think about how you might bring them back to your state, however that might look. So we really encourage you to, if you feel comfortable, to turn on your camera so you can have those conversations in your breakout group, be participatory and interactive with that Jamboard, and feel like you can contribute to the conversation both verbally and with those notes and in writing. So we are going to go into our first breakout for about 30 minutes. Your facilitators will be prompting you and moving you through these dialogue questions. And we'll come back here in about 30 minutes. Tracy will be sending a 5-minute notification when we're ready to come back. Tracy, I think, is there anything else that anybody needs to know before we break out?
I don't think so. Just, again, come back to the main room if you need any help. All right, are we sending them off? Here comes your little message.
All right, I hope everybody has a good time with their state cohort and maybe got to know some new people and reconnect with some folks, familiar faces. We are going to take a 5-minute break now, so grab some water, refresh, and we'll be back in 5 minutes to launch the next portion of the program.
Welcome back, folks. I'm going to take a couple seconds to get back started as we reconvene here. Great. So we're going to jump into the project goals and overview of the Bringing the Farm to School producer training, and really touch on the question of why bringing the farm to school. So the farm to school movement up to this point has been a very strong on educating students and food service personnel on the triple bottom line, which was explained earlier today. Because of this, there's relatively high demand on local products on school menus. While there's very strong farm to school programs that have great producer tools, there are still relatively few opportunities and resources for producers to be trained in accessing school markets. One of the goals of this project is to evaluate the amazing tools that many of you have created and create new ones as well, and identify where gaps exist, as well as to provide a comprehensive curriculum for state agency folks and farm to school leaders to use in helping build producer capacity to sell to schools. So the program approach, this is a train the trainer project. Both the National Center for Appropriate Technology, National Farm to School Network, and the USDA, we basically have developed a comprehensive curriculum for trainers to use in helping producers access school markets in their states. This week is the first of 7 regional trainings that we are hosting throughout the US, and we hope each state team in the Southeast leaves with an action plan to use for planning and preparing a local producer training within your respective state. The project phases of the regional facilitators workshop and local producer trainings are broken down into 3 phases of the project. First, there was a needs assessment, and that was completed by our evaluators at the New York University, and they'll be sharing just a bit of their findings from that needs assessment after this segment. Based off the findings of the needs assessment, our curriculum team developed the curriculum that you all received in the mail or are accessing right now digitally. If you would like to also access the materials online, you could do so at www.farm2school.org/bringingfts. Again, that's farm2school.org/bringingf2s. So right now we're going to start digging into what the curriculum and training tools will be like throughout the next few days. Since the national pilot was hosted in September, we've been working to finalize the case studies, which you can access on that website as well. And after completing the workshop, state training teams will hold local producer trainings within their respective states. Our ultimate goal is that you'll all have the tools, resources, and know-how after attending this regional facilitator workshop to build capacity of producers within your state. You may notice an overlap in the timing of the regional facilitator workshops and the producer trainings. This is because some state trainings may want to conduct their producer training shortly after this workshop while it's fresh on their minds and while there's still sort of momentum there. We encourage each state to approach the the planning of the local producer trainings that is best for your own state. So we also encourage state training teams to consider the production season, when producers might be available as attendees to attend an actual conference or building it into another conference that producers will be in attendance to. So the local producer training implementation options are as follows. The producer curriculum is designed to be flexible, adaptive, and customizable to the training opportunities within your state. On your screen, you'll see some of the options there. You and your team could plan a standalone training. The producer training could be added to an existing producer-focused event. You could even collaborate to incorporate curriculum content into a similarly focused producer training event within your state. We want there to be as much flexibility in presenting this information to all your producers, whether it be virtual or in person or a mix of both of those options. The format and agenda is also flexible depending on your time and capacities. You can find full sample agendas to help plan your training on page 112 of the Facilitator's Guide. And there, you'll see that the ideal recommended format is 2 full days of training with experiential components of farm tours, panels, as well as a producer and school nutrition staff participation. Alternatively, you could plan a single day and truncated content. You could also create flexibility by presenting the content in smaller half-day sessions over the course of several weeks. You can even conduct a targeted training with very specific content to specific producers within the farm to school arena within your state. So touching on funding for the training, there is additional information on funding your training in the Planning and Outreach Guide, which is covered on day 4 of this week, but we know it's important to talk about this from the start. So the graphic is available that you see on the screen right now in the Planning and Outreach Guide. I know it might be too small on the screen right now for all to really see some of the specifics, but Jenny Lee is going to actually paste some of that text within the chat momentarily. Yeah, but this graphic it's a great resource, and it breaks down the program user and lists many of the federal funding options for producer trainings that are available to you all. Funding resources are also listed on page 8 and 9 of the Planning Outreach Guide. And this may just give you a good start to generate some ideas on how to find funding for bringing the farm to school producer training within your state. And then this week, we'll also just touch on some of the opportunities to form partnerships that can really help the launching of your own producer trainings as well. So we also just want to reiterate that we're here to help as your state training teams start to plan a local producer training. It's important to note that you will not be working within a vacuum. You won't be alone. Our program team will be there to provide any kind of technical assistance and refer you to local resources within your area that your team might not be able to cover or may not know about. So we are here to support you in this planning process. And we'll also be delivering a series of webinars and online tools for individuals as well as state teams that are not able to make it to this current regional workshop. Anyone have any questions right now? If you do, just feel free to unmute yourself or share in the chat. All right, so hearing none, seeing none. So we're actually going to transition into a brief video in which you'll hear from one of our evaluation partners, Carolyn Dimitri from New York University, and she'll be talking specifically about the producer needs assessment that informed this current training. So I'm just going to share my screen momentarily. Okay, great. Hope everyone is seeing this.
And selling their.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Dimitri. Today I'm going to talk to you about the producer needs assessment findings that my colleague Lydia Oberholzer and I conducted when the National Farm to School Network and NCAT began developing their producer training curriculum. So the first part of the needs assessment was to understand the current state of knowledge, the possibilities of the farm to school market channel. We next examined the peer-reviewed and grade literature. We conducted a small number of interviews with key stakeholders in August and September of 2019, and we received feedback from the Project Advisory Council. So the first thing I would like to point out to you through these select stakeholder comments, that the response was very positive. There was an indication that farmers were extremely interested in selling their food to schools, but they really just didn't know how to do it, and they were looking for support in the process. And more specifically, they wanted to understand like the tangible aspects of it, like how do you actually do it? Where do you start? How do you find schools? And what kind of resources are available to help them in the process? So based upon the literature, we were able to identify the reasons farmers decided to participate in farm to school market channels. And interestingly, social factors were a really important motivation. Farmers saw that the farm to school market channels were a great way to build relationships with their community, a way to provide healthy food to children, and also to raise public awareness about food and agriculture. But the business aspects really matter too. And that farm to school market channels were seen as a way to diversify their markets and their business portfolio, a way to get stable prices and fair prices, and also that the distribution costs of the farm to school channel were lower. But the obstacles to participating in farm to school markets were many. And related to the market, the first one was that some farmers perceived that prices were low. The volume requirements could be too large or too small, depending upon the scale a particular farmer was producing at. And then obtaining food safety or third-party certification was seen as a gigantic barrier. And I think especially when you think that a lot of the farmers are competing with Cisco or Sodexo, where they have these very streamlined processes, that you can see how this would be hard for farmers to imagine, like how they could actually compete against those giant entities. The other obstacles to participating in farm to school markets were related to the transaction. So how do you bid, or how do you navigate that procurement process? Because schools often have a very bureaucratic system for procurement. And how do you find buyers and sellers? How do you maintain that buyer and seller relationship? And farmers didn't really know what schools wanted or needed, and they were unsure about how the payment situation worked. And so I think these two quotes really highlight two problems, like two of the most common problems. It's like, what does the school want? How often do they want it? And what, how consistent does the supply need to be? And then also, how do you take that first step and find a school that you could do business with, especially if you were operating in a school district that didn't have a farm to school coordinator. Logistics were perceived as another area that had several problems. And I think a lot of that circled around the fact that farms have raw product and schools can't cook. And so really, what should farmers be bringing to the school? How does it get there? How is it packaged? And what are the storage possibilities? So we came away with some important recommendations for content of the curriculum, and that it should consist of information on pricing, procurement, vendor and marketing requirements, logistics and transportation. As these were identified as like the 4 key areas where farmers really needed more solid and streamlined information. And that it would be really useful to have a decision tree so that farmers could look at this tree and decide, is it better for them to sell to a school, or is it better to sell through an intermediary who then sells to the school? And that the community benefits were an important part of the process, and this should also be highlighted. And that also this curriculum should include case studies, webinars that could be helpful tools for farmers. So in terms of delivery, we, based upon what we saw and learned from our review, is that it's really important for farmers to have reasonable expectations about farm to school markets, and that a farmer should be interested, but not every farmer really will want to use a farm to school market. So if this particular product could make it possible for farmers to understand, like, yes, this is a good market for me, or no, this is not a good market for me, then we decided that would be a really important outcome. In addition, the possibilities and the working with schools really, that does vary around the country depending upon what region a farmer and a school would be located in, and it's important to identify these regional differences. And that the training team should consist of people with varied backgrounds. So they needed people who understood food service, other people who understood child nutrition, and then another part of the team needed to be someone who understands how to work with farmers. And that leveraging the mentor relationship could be really helpful by pairing experienced farm to school producers with new farm to school producers, so that the experienced ones could be mentors and role models. But it would be really important for the curriculum to meet the needs of these two groups individually. And experiential learning has been proven to be a really effective academic tool. And so incorporating experiential learning into this curriculum along with the classroom learning would really make this a richer experience for producers. And this could include farm trips or role playing, and there are many different ways the experiential learning could be implemented, and that the webinars and written materials should be available for use in the future. So in conclusion, our needs assessment found that there really is great enthusiasm for the curriculum, and that by providing producers with knowledge and skills, they can make a decision about whether they want to enter the farm to school market, and that this type of curriculum could really increase the likelihood of the farmer success for those who do choose to enter the farm to school market. Thank you very much for listening to this, and I hope you enjoy your training curriculum.
And we do want to thank Carolyn and our NYU evaluation team. Clearly, a lot of the work that they did really informed how we developed the training, both in the content and the presentation. And I wanted to point out to you one resource, if you're interested in reading a little bit further about how we took these recommendations and the content needs identified for farmers and translated it into the curriculum. So in your packet, you received this project background, a small stapled piece of material in your green folder, and in there you'll find the needs assessment outcomes report. And so that really details how the identified needs for producer training were addressed within each of the different curriculum pieces. So we wanted to take a brief moment for you all to reflect on what you heard about producer needs and how that relates to what producers need in your state. So Tracy is going to launch our next poll, and what we want to hear from you in this poll is what are those top 3 producer training needs for farm to school in your state? And those are based on the areas that Carolyn and her team identified. And you can pick up to 3 choices to let us know what those top 3 training priorities would be in your state. Looks like we've got logistics and transportation in the lead there. Well, looks like we may have nailed these priorities. A lot of folks are identifying them as needs. Let's give another few seconds for folks to enter their top 3. All right, Tracy, if you want to close and share those responses, let's take a look and see what we heard from you all. It looks like procurement, so that contract or transaction information, as well as logistics and transportation were top needs that you all identified, with pricing a close second there. So, and these, as you can see in the materials, are well incorporated into the training. So hopefully we will provide you the resources to help support the producers in your community. All right, I'm going to turn it back to Tomas to talk a little bit more about how the training approaches are integrated into this presentation.
Great, thank you, Lacey. Yeah, so touching back on how the training approach is delivered, once we had the needs assessment findings, we wanted to make sure our training approach was one that could best address the barriers and challenges named by producers in a format that would be appropriate for adult learners, as well as engaging and finding usefulness and possibility out of these trainings. So with this in mind, we landed on 5 elements to guide our approach. Firstly, farm to school for all, meeting the goal of this program to build capacity of all agriculture producers to launch or expand efforts to market to schools means making sure that the training approach and curriculum is stakeholder-led and informed by those who work closely with producers. And then secondly, with contributions from all project partners, the curriculum we developed is designed to be relevant and accessible to as many producers who are interested in selling to schools as possible. The next element is the one size does not fit all and place-based element. While the overarching goal is farm to school for all, we know that farm to school looks different by region, sector, scale, and community, among other things. The curriculum is rooted in a foundational core concept of selling to schools identified through the needs assessment, as well as through project partner expertise. And we also acknowledge that it's meant to be flexible and customizable for region and locale to better ensure the program is grounded in the places where the producer trainings will occur. We identified opportunities through the curriculum to evaluate local and regional models and solutions through experiential educational opportunities, as well as site visits, and as well as case studies and local producer spotlights, to name a few. The next element is peer learning. Both the curriculum and overall training program include opportunities for peer learning and peer-led experiences, such as panels, facilitated group discussions with seasoned producers, and built-in networking and collaboration opportunities. The next element is action planning. The structural common thread that you'll see throughout the curriculum is the concept of action planning. The goal of the local producer trainings is that producers will leave with an action plan, including outlined long-term goals, short-term strategies, and next steps for adapting their business plan and pursuing school buyers. Additionally, state-level trainers will be equipped with a trainer action plan, a tool used to help trainers plan and deliver trainings to producers. You'll hear more about this action planning concept and how it'll be used for both producers and trainers later today. But for now, I'm going to pass it to Tammy and Anna to talk more about the Trainer Toolkit.
Thanks, Tomas. So I hope the background information y'all received thus far has helped frame how and why we have developed these resources. We've referenced some of the resources today and will continue to do so throughout the training. So let's start to dig into these tools so you can familiarize yourself with the scope of materials available to help you conduct successful producer trainings. So we use the Trainer's Toolkit to reference all of the training tools and materials available to help state training teams work with producers in their states. Today, we are just giving you a high-level overview of these resources at your disposal as trainers. But keep in mind that we will be digging into these materials and providing more detail about them over the next 3 days. So try not to get overwhelmed. A lot of people say on the first day after this training that they feel overwhelmed, but just keep in mind, we're really going to be digging in over the next 3 days. So the Trainer's Toolkit is divided into 4 buckets, which are outlined on your screen. You should have received a hard copy of most of these resources in the mail, or they were FedExed, except for that last bucket, which includes all of the online tools, including the entire toolkit plus bonus materials such as case studies. And Anna's going to be talking about that in a few minutes here after I review the physical resources. And I should mention that if you registered late and haven't received your materials, Jenny Lee just pasted the Farm to School webpage in the chat so you can access these materials and follow along online as well. So the Facilitator Guide is the facilitator-facing resource, basically what you all will be referencing to help you conduct your trainings. The producer workbook is to hand out to producers at your local producer workshop, and the planning and outreach tools are for trainer organizers, and that may be you folks, as you may be the facilitators and the training organizers. The case studies help illustrate producers and buyers engaged in procuring local foods, with the focus on the needs of the farmers, which were identified in that needs assessment that Carolyn was just talking about earlier. So let's dig into these resources so you can become familiar and with how to use them on your trainings, in your trainings. So, like I said, you should have received a packet via FedEx, and on your screen is an image of the Facilitator Guide. It has a yellow bar across the top. And so we're going to ask that you grab that and follow along with the hard copy of this Facilitator Guide if you have one, and then follow along online if you do not have a physical copy. So the Facilitator Guide will assist you in facilitating your local producer training through the use of the curriculum that our team has developed for this project. So let's dig into some of those features. Think of the Facilitator Guide as everything you need as a facilitator to review before and reference during your local producer trainings. The curriculum is organized into 4 training modules, which you see here on your screen, along with an introduction and conclusion. And like I said, we'll be digging into the specifics of each of these modules over the next few days. The first section of your Facilitator Guide, section 1, provides background information about the project, much of which you've been hearing about today thus far, and tips for training producer audiences. The training principles outlined by Tomas earlier are also outlined in this section and applied throughout the Facilitator Guide. So let's dig into section 2, which is really the lesson plan for trainers. Outlined, if you turn to page 9, there's a screenshot of it also on your screen. You can see a list of training modules. And if you are looking at this resource online, there are links to the slide decks and to the detailed curriculum outlines for each module that Lacey is going to be talking about in more detail tomorrow. Each module includes presentation slide decks and detailed lesson plans with talking points, facilitator prompts, and activities that you can use to help producers learn the content. I want to note here that one of the reasons we developed the training team concept is that some folks on your team may be better suited to teach certain modules than others. You know, for example, extension, ag extension agents might be best at teaching modules 3 and 4, where we really dig into price point with producers. But folks that are more experienced on the procurement end might be better at teaching modules 1 through 2. Your team will have the opportunity to identify best fits and gaps over the next few days. So don't worry if you're thinking, wow, we didn't have, you know, the extension folks here, or we need more procurement experience. You know, this is just, again, this is just the beginning for planning your training. So this section also includes specific guidance for each module, including facilitator backgrounds to help you prepare for teaching this topic at your local producer training. So let's look at an example. If you turn to page, and I'm also following along here, page 25 of your facilitator guide, you can see that module 1, you can see in module 1, the outline, which includes the producer and learning objectives, which are in that second column there, to check for understanding, and then a list of core concepts specific to this module. Below the outline, you can see a list of resources to help you learn more about the content within that module, including onto this next page, page 26, which includes a list of case studies and key terms for that specific module. And if you're, all of these are embedded, if you're looking at it online, the links are embedded. So you can just click on the links for digging deeper into those core concepts. So going into the facilitator, digging into the section 2 lesson plans, let's turn to page 29 now. This is a good example of the components featured in the lesson plans to support you for each slide in each module of the training. So you'll see here, there's a thumbnail of the slide from the corresponding presentation slide decks. And each slide includes suggested talking points in the brackets there. These are intended to support diverse teaching approaches and help you minimize reading from the slides. You do not need to read verbatim from the talking points, and the talking points are meant to simply provide some guidance for you. You're welcome to change the talking points in your own slide decks. And we encourage you to change the talking points, especially as they relate to regionalization. Facilitator prompts emphasize anything particularly important about, information, background information, and instruction techniques to keep the content actionable for producers. And then, as you can see on slide 10 on page 29, there's a regionalization tip here. And that indicates content areas that should be presented, or we suggest should be presented with local and or regional examples and information. So we strongly encourage you to customize this training as much as you can for your specific audience. We will be providing you with guidance on how you can do this when we go over each module in the next few days, and then your teams will be brainstorming on how you can do this in your own state and region. So there are lots of applied activities throughout this curriculum. And you can see an example of the facilitator guidance for applied activities. If you turn to page 33, The activities are flagged in yellow in this guide and also in the corresponding slide decks. They include instructions, materials and tools, and suggested reflection questions to help you connect the content to the producer workbook. And in many cases, the activities are based on the worksheets from the producer workbook, which we will be reviewing next. But first, before we do that, let's look at section 3 of the facilitator guide, starting on page 108 of your facilitator guide. It's just after our very extensive glossary, which you're welcome to review as well. The appendices include extra resources for you and may be better accessed online because many of them include links to some of these online resources. The facilitator resources are broken down by module. If you feel like you need more resources to do that particular section of the training. The facilitator tools in Appendix A also include guidance on planning a panel, building your training team, and also we have sample agendas. And you can look at those by turning to page 111. Appendix B includes a list of producer-specific resources that we encourage you to reference throughout the curriculum. You will find the lesson plans for the option. There's also some optional modules in Appendix C, and the evaluation guidance that Lydia will be explaining on day 4 is in Appendix D. A copy of your trainer action plan is included in your pocket folder, but there's also a copy of it here in the facilitator guide. So you can use that if you find that to be more handy. And so that about wraps it up for the overview of the facilitator guide. So now we're going to turn to the producer workbook. So take a few minutes to grab that particular resource. It has a green band along the top. But while we wait for you to do that, are there any questions that I can answer about the facilitator guide? There's some great information about a gap support program, which is wonderful. We're really hoping our teams identify some of that region-specific material. Okay, feel free to unmute too if you want to just ask a question that way. All right, well, I'm going to go on to the producer workbook then. So the producer workbook is basically the producer-facing resources for your local producer trainings. This is what you will hand out to producers who attend your trainings, and it has that lime green color bar at the top. We wanted the producer workbook to truly be more of a workbook. So there isn't as much text in the workbook, but there are a lot of activities and worksheets. And we did organize a workbook so that it corresponds with each module. So keep that in mind. Each module includes an abbreviated outline. We wanted producers to have a quick glance at what topics are included in that section, as well as a list of resources to help them understand the concepts of that particular module. So why don't you turn to page 10 of the producer workbook. You can see an example here of one of the producer worksheets. Each module has one or even more than one worksheet, many of which correspond with those applied activities that we were talking about that are outlined in your lesson plans in section 2 of the facilitator guide. So it's important for you as facilitators to become familiar with the worksheets so that you can help producers if they have questions about the worksheets or the activities during the training. And those worksheets are actually have been collated and are available online under the facilitator tools. So let's turn to page 21 of the workbook. You can see an example of an abbreviated version of one of the many case studies for this project that are scattered throughout this workbook. And the case studies are abbreviated in the producer workbook to provide just some context and a practical applied example of the concept within that particular module. And I'll talk more about the case studies in a minute. We've included these case studies in the workbook to just really help provide producers with that context and that practical application of the concepts. So if you turn to page 52, that's where the appendices for the producer workbook start. And they include some key resources that producers will actually be using throughout this training. And we'll be digging into how these resources will be utilized in the producer trainings over the next few days when we're really exploring each module in detail. But one of the key resources in the appendices is the School Business Action Plan. So the School Business Action Plan lives, like I said, in the producer workbook on Appendix A, starting on page 52. And this might be a good thing to actually, it is in the producer workbook, but it might be a good thing to consider printing for your training so that producers do not have to keep moving between the action plan and the workbook throughout your training. And it will help produce, the goal of the action plan is to help producers organize their goals and their next steps as they move through their training. And our team has developed a supplemental online training for you all to help producers work through this action plan at the Bringing the Farm to School site. And we'll include the link to that in the chat. So let's move on to the case studies. The case studies in the workbook, like I said, are basically an abbreviated form of a series of case studies of producers and other supply chain leaders engaged in school sales. These case studies are in multiple formats and features producers that have addressed the challenges identified in that needs assessment. And it really helps address that like peer learning approach that Tomas was talking about earlier. These case studies, they primarily live online, so be sure to point producers to this amazing resource through your training or when you're doing your training. And we'll be talking about how to access and look at those case studies in the online format in a minute. But I do want to mention that the case studies are very much, they're in the form of a video, a podcast, or we also have written case studies. So it'll be, we highly encourage you to look at them. Okay, so the next resource is that Planning and Outreach Guide. And it's everything you as a trainer or a trainer organizer will need to plan, execute, and do outreach for a local producer training. And many of the tools in this guide are online and can be downloaded by trainers and trainer organizers. And this is also listed as a hard copy in your packet, but it's not spiral bound. And you can see it has a purple band across the top. So as you can see in the table of contents in that Planning and Outreach Guide, there's a checklist for training organizers. There's also budget templates, which are also online and you can download and enter your own information. And lots of templates to help with the outreach piece. So if you turn to page 16 through 18 of the Planning and Outreach Guide, you can get an idea of some of the amazing formatted materials that Anna Mullen and NCAT's graphic designer, Amy Smith, developed for trainers to use as outreach. These materials are all available online, and you can use and adapt them for your local producer trainings. And this is a perfect segue to look at the online interface and online tool version of the tools I've just described. So I'm going to pass this along to Anna Mullen, who did a fantastic job developing the online platform for all of these materials. So she's going to explain how to navigate these resources and more through the Bringing the Farm to School webpage. Anna?
Thank you, Tammy. Just confirming, Tammy, can you give me a thumbs up? You see my screen? Perfect, thanks. So as Tammy said, I'm gonna just give you a quick walkthrough of the digital version of all of these resources that Tammy just provided. And we think there's a real benefit to being familiar both with their hard copy versions. And as Tammy pointed out, there are lots of interactive features that using these online versions will really be able to bring more life to them. So the website is farmtoschool.org/bringingf2s. That's been dropped in the chat a few times. And I'm just going to walk you through how this is organized and how you can navigate it. So when you come to this page, you'll see some basic information about the program. The facilitator workshops that you are a part of now is our big focus at the moment. And then when you scroll a little bit lower, we have the training materials, and this is organized by user type. So facilitators can click this button, producers can click this button, and then the case studies have a page too. So I'm going to walk you through each of those pages and where these resources live. So if we click on the facilitator resources, we come to a page just for folks like you and for training organizers that have all of the resources, the digital resources of the hard copy resources we just looked at. So you can click this button to download a digital copy of that facilitator guide. And that will look like this, which you can see looks just like your hard copy version. And one of the benefits of this digital version, as we said, is that there are lots of hyperlinks and materials throughout. So one of the things you can do is actually click on the numbers in the table of contents and it'll drop you down to that section. So if you want to look just at module 1, you can click here and it'll take you right there. And once you're in here, you'll see all these blue links too that'll link you to materials, that'll link you to digging deeper and core concept resources, etc. So know that there's lots of opportunities to be interactive here. One quick tip for you is that if you are clicking to specific pages in this document, it'll drop you right to them. But if you are linking to something like these videos or clicking to them, they'll open up in a new window. So if you don't want to lose your place in this, just be sure to right click and select to open in a new tab, and that way you won't lose your place in this document. So lots of interactive features here. You'll also notice at the beginning of each module, there's a link to download the slide deck, which you can download and customize for your specific training. So back on the facilitator resource page, we also have linked the slide decks for each of the modules. So you can just click this and it'll download a PowerPoint slide automatically. So you don't have to go into that facilitator guide PDF document to do that. You can do that right here on this page. And then we also have a few additional webinar recordings and documents for you as facilitators here on this page too. And then a little bit lower, we have that planning and outreach guide, which Tammy just mentioned. And this is really a tool that's going to be most useful for you in its digital form because there's so many templates in it. So you can see here that we have all those templates linked directly on this page that you can click them and download them automatically to customize them. The same principles apply in this planning and outreach guide with the table of contents linked to different sections that you can drop down to. So we can show you that really quickly. And in this guide, we have two different kinds of links. We hyperlinked blue things that are those downloadable tools are blue, and then the purple phrases will drop you to different sections. So for example, you can see that in this checklist, we have develop a budget. So if you click that link, it'll take you to the budget template in the document. So this is really meant to be like interactive and get you to the resources that you need quickly. So put a pin in remembering this planning and outreach guide, because we'll come back to it on day 4 and look more at all those individual tools. A little bit further on the page, we also have this link to the producer workbook, so that you as a facilitator, if you want to download that directly, can do that quickly. And we will now look at the producer page. So the producer, if you remember on that first home page, this one, we have that button for producers. So if we go to that producer page, it looks like this. And their primary resource is that producer workbook. So again, you have the hard copy version in front of you, but you can send producers this link and they can download the digital version. Looks like this. Same principles apply. Lots of links to get to different module sections, to download case study resources and other worksheet documents. So very interactive. We also have a separate copy of that school action or school business action planning guide. Is just a standalone document instead of having to fish it out of that big workbook. And then we also have a packet of just the worksheets. So again, if you don't want to download and print the entire producer workbook, but just a few specific worksheets or sections, here's some links to help you do that. The last section of this is our case studies page. So this is what Tammy mentioned. You see these case studies linked throughout the producer workbook and the facilitator guide, but we have them all listed on this page. They're listed and organized by the farm or producer name. So you'll see that on the left-hand side, their location on the right side of that title, and then our case studies. So as Tammy mentioned, they come in 3 formats. We have written case studies, audio podcast case studies, and then video case studies. So again, these are just links that you can click and they'll open in new tabs for you. And I'll just quickly show you what they look like. Here's an example of one of the written case studies. That's a document that you can read through and print or share with producers during your training. We have the audio podcast case studies here. So when you link, it'll take you to this page where you can listen to those audio interviews. And then we have videos, which are all uploaded to YouTube, again, linked on that page, but really easy to watch and share with producers as well. So those are the 3 key components of our website. Again, as you can see, you have hard copy versions. These are the online versions that'll make it easy to access all of the different tools and links and resources that are meant to be customizable for you to package and create a training that works best for you and the producers that you are reaching. Any questions about the website that I can answer now? I know we'll keep referencing it as we go through the week too. Looks like we're good. Thanks.
Also happy to answer any questions about any of the resources we've shared with you thus far, because we understand it might be a little overwhelming to look at them all.
I have a question, and it's just easier to talk than do it in the chat box. That's okay. Okay, so there's the training module, and then there's the school business action planning guide. How are those connected? How do we connect those for the purposes of this future training?
Jenny Lee, do you want to answer that since you're the school business action planning guide person?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll be going into more detail about that tomorrow, but essentially the action planning guide, it lives in the producer workbook in an appendix, and it's really to support producers as they go through the modules in their producer workbook. And so at the end of each module, we you'll be checking in with producers around sort of the learning objectives for each module, and they'll be identifying sort of next steps, action items that they need to pursue, timelines, et cetera, and sort of filling in this action plan as they go through. And so really the goal is that producers leave with an action plan. They know what their sort of immediate next steps are, their sort of long-term goals related to farm to school, and they have that sort of in their workbook. And so I'll get into more detail about that tomorrow, but it is essentially sort of the way in which we're supporting producers to take what they're learning in the training and translate into their business and sort of the next steps they need to take in their farm to school work.
There's also a prompt in the facilitator guide, like after each module, that prompts the facilitator to have the producer check in with their action planning guide and kind of check their learning and see what they might need to do in terms of next steps.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Right. So I'm Brenda and I'm with Communities Unlimited. And so I am engaged with a number of growers, but I don't really think they're interested in the training because I've had some growers say to me, we've been through training, we've done that, we don't want any more training, but I know they're interested in farm to school. How would I address that? What should be my next step?
Well, it might be, and I would welcome our whole curriculum team to also pipe in here. But yeah, we understand producers are really busy, and to ask them to attend a 2-day training is, we understand it's a big ask. So some suggestions that I might have is like just producers love site visits and maybe incorporating some of the curriculum content into like a site visit to help illustrate how to approach schools and do school sales. Or this is our second regional facilitator workshop, and one of the teams that we were working with had thought about actually doing kind of like a producer buyer meeting, and then incorporating the curriculum into that piece. And then, but also have an opportunity to actually connect with buyers. So it kind of makes it worth their time. So, and then of course, there's always the option to do point folks to the online resources, and they might kind of pick and choose how they would use the materials. So I'm curious if the other folks at National Farm to School Network or the rest of our team might have some other suggestions.
I think those are all great, Tammy. And I think the only thing I'd add in addition is maybe looking at some of those case studies. If there are particular challenges that the producers you work with experience, maybe identifying within those case studies some examples and sending those over. And as Tammy said, those are in the form of podcasts as well as videos. So even if a producer may not be interested in reading a full case study, putting on a podcast or watching a quick video might be a great option to introduce some of those ideas.
Great. Well, if there's no other questions right now, we're going to move on to our actual Q&A portion. But before we do that, I'd just like to quickly check in with you all and open it up to just broadly, what are your thoughts on the training so far? So I'll ask you to do two things. First, think of a word. One word that best describes the Bringing the Farm to School agricultural producers training program right now. And secondly, if you're willing, share that word with us either through the chat or unmute yourself and share then. Extensive, thorough, big picture. Optimism, comprehensive. all encompassing. Great. Well, I encourage you all to just continue sharing those words in the chat. But right now we'll move on to our actual Q&A portion. So we just provided a pretty large overview of all of the curriculum and training materials, and we know there may be a lot of questions, that are kind of buzzing around within all of you. But we'll be digging into each component in much more detail over the next 3 days. But for now, if there are any broad questions on anything that we've covered, or specific questions that you have right now, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or share them through the chat. All right. Well, seeing no questions right now, I'll give a few more moments to think of something, and we encourage you all to share them.
Tiffany had a good suggestion about just, Tiffany, do you want to mention your suggestion about kind of connecting trainers with USDA nutrition programs?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tiffany Torres. I'm in Florida, and I've worked a couple times with the trainings that happen for farmers that participate in the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, which incorporates WIC FMMP and senior FMMP for target audiences. And then there's also WIC separate from that. So, and other nutrition programs too. But I know that those producers that participate in those programs have to go to programs to trainings regularly. So since it is a captive audience, just thinking about how to incorporate some of this, even as like a teaser or relationship building at those meetings. That's mostly why I would go to them in the past, was to kind of see if there were other aspects of farm to school, not just procurement, that those farmers wanted to participate in. So yeah, just wanted to encourage y'all to explore those target audiences. And you could probably reach out to whoever operates those programs in your state to figure out when those trainings are. They're usually regionally and on a quarterly basis, I believe. So, and I also thought about nutrition incentive programs too, for any like doubling SNAP dollars. There are probably folks in every state that have great networks in that regard that would be happy to help get you in touch with producers.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Tiffany. And thank you for all the responses, everyone. I'm gonna just give a few more seconds for folks to share any kind of thoughts or questions that they might have. But following this segment, we'll actually be leading into a 20-minute break. We'll reconvene at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And when we do that, we'll actually be in our panel discussion for the day with Glenn Holmes and Tommy Gladney of New North Florida Cooperative. But if there's not any other questions right now, we just take a quick break and reconvene at 3 p.m. Eastern.
I had a quick question around like best practices or sharing best practices beyond this 4-day training. So will there be opportunities for the facilitators to continue to keep in touch to say like, this is what worked well in our state, we recommend this or that, or like just opportunities to continue networking?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be kind of an extension of our technical assistance, is to share successes and even challenges that particular states might have moving forward as they're planning the producer trainings. And yeah, I mean, I think that if there's a desire to stay connected, each of the state teams on the call right now, or anyone as an individual, can let us know, and we can certainly sort of group you into any of the other state teams that are on the call right now. So that's certainly something that we encourage, and you want to do our best in supporting you all and staying connected beyond your state team. Mm-hmm. All right, well, seeing none and hearing none, so we're going to take a break for now, and then we'll reconvene at 3 p.m. Eastern time. See you then, folks.
Hey, folks. while we wait for to get our participant or our panel participants connected, we are actually going to just switch the panel and the trainer action plan. So I'm happy to introduce my colleague, Jenny Lee Harris, and she has been helping with this curriculum from the very beginning. And she's going to explain to you how you folks as trainers can use action planning to help plan your producer training. So why don't you take it away, Jenny Lee?
Great, thanks. Yeah, just getting my all of my resources situated. Great. So yeah, let's dig into the trainer action plan. And this is actually a pretty brief overview intended to be an introduction into our next breakout group. So I think we're going to kind of play it by ear in terms of timing. But to orient, let's go to our next slide. Oh, do you have the slide deck open? Yeah, okay. Sorry. Great. So first, let's orient. So a copy of the trainer action plan, we have a separate printed copy for folks that's located in your workshop folder that you received in the mail. If you also would prefer to look at it in the facilitator guide, it lives in Appendix G in the facilitator guide on page 139. That's also where you can access it digitally. If you're looking at the digital version online, is on page 139 of the facilitator guide. But again, we have that sort of separate printed copy in your folder, just easier to reference and write in as needed throughout the week. You can see on this slide, this is the image of the action plan. We developed this action plan for trainers to really help pull a lot of those big picture components of all the planning that it'll take for your producer training into one place. So you'll be spending a lot of time with this resource throughout the workshop and in your state breakout teams. And really the purpose of the trainer action plan, there's sort of a couple purposes. One is to really model the producer action planning that's going to occur during the producer trainings that you'll be hosting. And like I mentioned earlier, I'll be digging into a little bit more about what that producer action planning piece looks like tomorrow. And also we wanted this trainer action plan to just help better assist you with assessing your training team's strengths and gaps and identifying those important next steps towards planning your own producer training in your state. So right now I'm going to go over the structure of the trainer action plan and how it functions alongside some of the other resources that we have. So the first part of the trainer action plan is a team assessment, which is really just a checklist of items that start on this first page on page 139 and it ends on page 140. And the checklist is organized into 6 buckets. So know the content, build your training team, make it local, plan your agenda, identify and reach your audience, and plan for action. So these buckets are really intended to take you through the steps of developing content expertise, making sure you have your training team in place, customizing the curriculum as necessary for your producer audience, honing and planning that agenda to meet your producer needs, reaching your audience for outreach and promotion of your training and making sure you're getting the right folks in the room, and then planning for action. So making sure that you have sort of all those pieces together to move forward with your training. And so I just wanted to flag too that these buckets that I mentioned in the checklist, these are also aligned with the getting started section in the facilitator guide on pages 4 through 6. So that's just something to note as well. And this is, again, just intended to support you in identifying all, sort of where those strengths and gaps are and making sure you understand what those next steps are that you need to take to plan your training. And so throughout this week, you'll be going through these buckets and completing the assessment checklist in your state breakout sessions. So on the next slide, you'll see that the second part of this resource at the bottom of page 140 and going on to page 141 includes the actual action plan table. So it looks like this table that you see here on the screen. And this is where teams are encouraged to really insert those necessary action steps, those corresponding timelines, and any additional resources or tools needed to successfully plan and host a training in your state. So the filled out action plan in conjunction with the planning and outreach guide, which we'll dig into later this week, will really become your blueprint for planning and preparing your training. So you'll be generating a lot of content that can go into this action plan during this week. So I wanted to just look at a quick example. And if you look for each topic area, again, it's important to sort of start with that checklist. And in this example, we're looking at the know the content bucket. And so you can see that this state group has members with broad knowledge and expertise spanning both child nutrition programs and working with producers. So they feel comfortable with the sort of core concepts of school sales and marketing. They sort of have already been oriented and understand where they can access slide decks and lesson plans. They can see so far how the facilitator guide and the producer workbook sort of work together. But the team is less familiar with how to really access and navigate the resources found in the trainer toolkit and to supplement their content knowledge and support their training planning efforts. So this might be where a lot of state teams are right now today, and that's okay. That's what we're sort of here to work on this week. So if this is sort of the assessment that a team has around the sort of content knowledge around both child nutrition program and producer expertise, as well as how to navigate the trainer toolkit, if you look at the next slide, you can see how to use the action plan to sort of place in those action steps, right? So maybe spending time with digging deeper resources and reading through the facilitator guide and the producer workbook together is something that you might task yourself with to do after this training. And you know, our goal with this workshop is really to work through those pieces and make sure that each state leaves with this week with a solid understanding of what the materials are, how they work together, how to access and share them, and of course, how best to use them in your particular state. And I just wanted to note, you can see in the timeline here, this might be, depending on when you're planning to do your first training or to incorporate the curriculum materials in a training that you already have on the docket, will sort of dictate what that timeline looks like. But wanted to note that the planning and outreach guide is really an excellent tool to review in tandem with the trainer action plan, like I mentioned earlier, because it includes those detailed checklists for planning and preparing your producer training that can really align with the way that the trainer action plan is structured, and just provides myriad action steps that you'll likely want and need to include in this table. So again, you're going to hear a lot more about the planning and outreach guide later this week, but just wanted to flag that as a resource as you're thinking about how to use your trainer action plan. So to think sort of to facilitate group brainstorming and support action plan development in a virtual setting, we're also using Jamboard, right? And so as you've already seen, each breakout group has their own set of boards, and many of these boards are aligned with both the workshop agenda as well as the trainer action plan. So you're going to see components of the trainer action plan in the Jamboards as well to help facilitate that conversation. So I'm going to pause, and I think the next piece was to sort of go into breakout sessions or move forward with our panelists. So I will defer to Tomas or Tammy, who may have more information if folks are connected now.
Before we jump in, Glenn, I'm just going to say just a few words about just why the panel is a part of this training in general. So as part of designing a peer-led and expressional training, we recommend that trainers include at least one panel or facilitated group discussion featuring local farmers and school market representatives during each local producer training you host. These discussions create an important opportunity for incorporating local context, answering specific marketing questions, and addressing common misconceptions about selling to schools. These panels can also function as a networking opportunity between and amongst producers and school buyers. We encourage trainers to customize the panel for your producer audience. We'll be hearing from Tommy Gladney and Glenn Holmes, who are from the New North Florida Cooperative. Glenn serving as our food hub representative as well as a producer, and Tommy serving as our producer panelist today. We wanted to highlight areas that are most relevant to the trainers and really just give you a nice glimpse into what farm to school is within the Southeast. So on that note, I'm going to ask you, Glenn and Tommy, just a few questions. But before that, I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce both yourselves.
Okay. Of course, my name is Glenn Holmes, and I represent actually two food hubs, New North Florida Cooperative and Holmes County Food Hub. We are one of the pioneers of farm to school. We've been doing it for 25 years. It's still a great market, but it's still a great challenge. And I'm hoping that we can bring some more insight to encourage other brewers and food hubs to get involved in the process.
Yeah, I'm Tommy Gladney, and I'm one of Glenn's helpers. And then along the way, I'm learning more about the produce business and selling to the schools and stuff like that. And I think it's going to be a real challenge.
Excellent. Thank you. So yeah, just a few questions to ask. How many schools right now do you all work with?
Well, we work with schools in 3 different states, Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi. For schools, you want to know schools or school districts. If I tell you schools, it probably scare you. But school, we probably work with, if you combine all 3 states, we probably work with about 1,000 schools.
Wow.
Because we actually work on 2 levels. We work direct to the schools, and we also work through the DoD program, the Department of Defense. And when we conduct that market, we actually go to the through the procurement department in the state office, and that way the product is distributed statewide. That's why it's so many schools. So it's about 3,000 schools that we work with on both levels.
Excellent, excellent. It's really impressive. It's really commendable. With those schools, what are some of like the most popular products that you kind of see across all 3 of those states selling?
Collard greens and sweet corn is getting pretty popular. Is something that as small farmers and we could process and distribute pretty readily. Butternut squash is getting popular now some, and also we're looking at some broccolini coming into the fold on. But the most popular is your collards, and for small farmers that we work with, it's collards and sweet corn cobbets. And we're promoting cream corn too. But so sweet corn and collards are most popular now.
Excellent. Could you give us an example of what like the volume or just amounts that maybe on a monthly basis that you're selling to all of these?
Well, on a monthly, let's look at it on 2 different levels. We do, like I said, we go directly to the school, and we work through DoD. So say DoD, for example, we do say 8,000 cases of cobbets, sweet corn cobbets, and about 7,000 cases of fresh collards. And that's bulk delivery for distribution statewide. And for your other products, we do probably about anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 pounds of collards a month to the schools, directly to the schools. But we also do the snack packs, which is to keep what the school serves through the after school program. So we do about 25,000 snack packs a month to go to the school. about 25,000.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Great. So kind of bringing it back to just the initial steps that you took to really get linked up with schools when you were working in Florida, what were some of the just, initial steps or connections that you made kind of off the bat?
Well, the biggest thing, and what I'm showing Tommy too, and the other small farm we're working with, is that you got to find you one food director that will sort of sponsor you and be your mentor to sort of train you about the procurement process. So when we first started, I was lucky enough to find one and started learning under her in terms of how they how schools procure, how they calculate their costs on a per serving feeding basis. And so that's the biggest thing I try to share with everyone is try to find you one school district, no matter how small it is, and learn the procurement process and the process by which they calculate their servings, and that will help you on your production end.
And what were some of the initial steps that you took to, really build some of those connections and relationships on that small scale?
Well, just basically going and once you find a food director you click with, you just become a student. It's sort of, you just got to you got to develop a good relationship with her to where it's I call it a business friendship relation. Now, I had one professor said that type of relationship don't exist, but a food director buys from you because she want to, not because she have to. And so you got to become you got to befriend her so she can trust you, so she can procure from you while she's teaching you. So you got to find you one food director that you got something in common with, no matter how small the school district is, and that's learn from her and let her be your ally to move to the next school district. That was the most important thing that I believe in building a relationship with the schools throughout the southeast that we did. We found a food director that had a good reputation, that wanted to work with us, and use her as a word of mouth to talk to other food directors. And it made it easy for us to leapfrog from one county to another county and from one state to another state.
Great. As you've become such a sizable operation, do you find that those same sort of initial steps to get connected with schools are the same, or are they coming about in different sort of more streamlined ways?
It's the same, and each food director is different. The process don't change by which they buy, but you got to learn how to analyze the personalities, the cultural drawbacks, and all. You got to almost be a psychologist when you go in there. And after a while, once you keep repeating that process, you kind of figure out what district gonna work and which won't work for you. But it's a learning process, and basically you got to be a good people person, almost like a salesman, so you know where to go and where you don't go, and it works. It just takes time to learn the craft and learn people. The biggest thing is learning people, and it saves a lot of time when you do that. Now, I always tell groups or individuals that want to do farm to school, I sort of give them a sort of a guide to work off of, and trying to develop, different type of markets. A rural school district in terms of what they would do is different from a urban school district. And then you got to look at your demographics, how many Blacks, how many whites, Hispanics that may be going to that school district. So your marketing approach is designed really around the makeup of that school district. Like I said, the procurement process is pretty much the same, but it's the people and the culture that you got to deal with when you go in there in terms of what they will and what they won't do.
That makes a lot of sense. From a school's perspective, in your experience, what do you think some of the concerns are when developing these relationships, or some of the challenges or barriers that exist from their perspective in your vast experience?
You know, one of the biggest concerns I think that food directors have now is, and it's gonna sound funny, most food directors are private people and they don't want a lot of people in their business. I know that sounds funny, but they don't want, what they do with you, they really don't want you to per se, that's between you and them in terms of how they go about running their shop. And so I think the big concern with is how much information will be previous to the public when you leave there. So they are real cautious about how they spend their money. They're not breaking the rules, but you know, most of them got certain way they do things, and they really don't want for everyone to know that. And so the big concern with them is how much information can I share with this person, and who will he go out and share with, and I think that's the biggest thing. So, you know, talking with them and having them, you know, knowing it up front and telling them that, you know, what we talk about and what we do here and what you pay for a product is, once the meeting's over with, that's the end of that. And I won't go out and share that. Because a lot of time, you might have one food director might pay you a little more for a product than another food director. And because I have had that happen to me when I first started. And that food director called that other food director, well, how do you pay that much for that? You know, so, and it kind of spooked her when that happened. So I think most of them, since farm school have got so big in terms of what I call in public, when I first started, it was easy because it wasn't that big a spotlight on food directors. But now, since you got the, you know, F&S more involved in it and other entities, they feel like everybody's sort of looking at them now in terms of how they run their shop. So you got to be real careful when you go talk to them now, so you don't spook them. Yeah, that's the biggest concern is who's watching who.
Great, thank you for that response. So generally, what are some of the key things that you think producers need to know about building relationships with schools? I know you've touched on many of them, but what would you say the most important things are?
Well, I think what really to happen with groups and individuals that want to get involved with farm to school as it relates to developing a relationship with the food director, they first need to find a program that's working and go and really have a heart-to-heart talk with either the grower or the food hub. So when they do engage that food director, they can have their ducks in order. I think a lot of times growers go and expecting too much from the food director, and it actually spooks the food director off. And so if they can get their ducks in order prior to and know just as much about what a food director does in terms of procurement, menuing, it would help the food director become a lot more at ease with them. But when they go in sort of guessing and putting pressure on the food director to do something without having their ducks in order, it sort of put them on the edge in a sense. And so I think the biggest thing is that they need the food producer groups, organization really need to find a program that's working and educate themselves on the do's and the don'ts. It's going to vary some, but basically it's going to be the same when they come down to procuring. I hope I answered that question.
Oh yeah, thank you for that. It's a great response. Before we open it up to the attendees here to ask questions, the last question we have is just giving you an opportunity to kind of just, touch on any kind of myths that you think exist about farm to school right now. What are some of the misconceptions or things that are just flat out like not true when you think about farm to school and others may have concerns around?
Well, I know I went to several conferences, and a lot of professors say farm to school don't pay, it can't cash flow, and it won't work for small farmers. That's the biggest myth. Is a lot of professors, say it won't work. That's the biggest myth. It won't work, and I'm here to say that's not true. It works. It's just a matter of linking with the right initiative, a right project, and learning the right way. It may not be for big farmers, which big farmers already selling to the school. I always thought farming school was for small, medium-sized farmers, because their scale is at the point to where they can it works for them. So I think the biggest myth is that some small farmers, have heard from professors and other extension workers, in a sense, to say farming school don't work. And I think until they go out and find a successful project or a program and look at the numbers, that myth could be kicked out pretty fast. I know it worked. Like I said, we've been doing it for 25 years. And so I think it's the best market out there for small growers. So that's the only myth that I know probably still stand, is some of the academians saying it don't work.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for that. Before we open it up to the rest of the attendees, one question for you, Tommy. From your perspective, why is working with New North Florida Cooperative a better fit than selling directly to schools? Why do you think going through that food hub channel is a more appropriate avenue?
To learn, better about the food school system and the way they work, and know what to expect when you deliver to the schools, and make sure that the produce is fresh and the best quality produce, which is greens and corn and squash. Make sure it's the best that they can be.
Great. And what made you decide to go with this marketing channel to market your farm products through that?
Because it's, like I say, it's a great learning process, and it's a great experience. You get a chance to meet different peoples, like the food directors and such on, and you become friends firsthand, and it's just a great thing. I think it would be a process thing.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Tommy. So yeah, now we can open it up to everyone else on the call right now. If you have any questions for Tommy and Glenn, feel free to unmute yourself and share them now. We can also share questions through the chat. Looks like there was one shared with the chat already from Tessa. What made schools, as opposed to other markets, a good market for you to pursue? Has selling to schools facilitated your selling to hospitals or universities, et cetera, that have also been financially beneficial?
Okay, that's a question for us?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, when we started selling to the school, we started selling cut leafy green, and it was so popular in the school, a lot of the cafeteria workers wanted us to put them in the grocery store. So we actually thought of putting some in the grocery store, and it got so popular in the grocery store to the guy in South Carolina, Rawls Farm, that we actually changed the way they cut their green. So sometimes you can outgrow success, but anyway, again, our primary market is the school. But normally, what will happen is, because you encounter so many different people, that they always would put you on different other markets if you got time to do that. Whether it's direct marketing, because a lot of times when we deliver to the schools, a lot of cafeteria work would order some product from us. So that question, yes, the stores had opened it up to us because of that, and indirect marketing had opened up just because we were selling to the schools.
Any prospects to sell to hospitals or universities or sort of other similar institutions like that?
Well, when we do the numbers, a lot of time, because we're not most farm to school vendors are not what they call full line vendors. And what that is, you don't care a large variety of products. So a lot of times the market you think is great may be great if you was a full line vendor. But because a hospital going to order so many collard greens, for example, or so many butternut squash. And so a lot of times, we have to look at that in terms of numbers and the volume. It may seem like a lot because it's a hospital, but what I like about the school is that if they feed 20,000 kids a day, they're gonna feed 20,000 kids tomorrow. So you can kind of lock in. You can make money on one product if you had to. The hospital is good for some vendors, but I never saw it as in our area as a market that we need to pursue because the volume they would order probably wouldn't be as high as a school. So you really couldn't make the money you wanted to make. But the demand to deliver the product would still be the same. You just wouldn't make as much money because the number is not as high as a school district would be in terms of feeding every day. I know that sounds funny, but even some universities, because we tried FAMU University in Tallahassee, and of course most of those markets are controlled by management companies, and so sometimes they'll play politics with you. They'll order a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but after a while you figure out that they're not ordering enough to really be worth your time. Now that's just in my area. Now you might go to another area and they just order. But in our area, we just never had luck with the university trying to procure with them.
Great, thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben in the chat had one question. Could you please explain the process of how you were approved to supply for DoD Fresh?
Well, it's a process, but it's not, well, I'm not gonna say it's not hard because it all depends on where you're at. Years ago, when we first started, our first school district, when DoD first started years ago, one of the food directors asked me to become a DoD vendor at that time because she had DoD funding she could pay me direct with, and I did. Back then, individual grower could be a DoD vendor, but politics got into it and they changed it. Well, and so now you got prime vendors that does it. So you may have one vendor like in Birmingham, he might represent all of Alabama and a good bit of Florida. And so the way to get around that, the way we got to where we could sell a DoD after they took the small man out the equation, we started a relationship with the state food director and the state procurement person, and because we was already delivering to the schools locally, and we was attending their annual school food service conference, they knew who we were, and so basically we just went and talked with the state procurement person and told them what we had and what we wanted, and they said, "Well, Glenn, let's give it a try." And so after that, they told us what kind of volume they wanted and how they wanted. And we grew the product, processed it, and delivered to their distributor in those states, and it worked out fine. But it all starts with the state procurement person, the one that runs the procurement, which is food purchase and distribution. That's the person you talk with. And once they say, "Yeah, I want this," but then they'll tell the person they got the prime vendor agreement with DoD that works that area to contact you the procurement person will give you the order, and then basically the one that got the prime contract will contact you and say, well, this state ordered 8,000 cases of corn, and they'll tell you whether or not you're going to have gap or any type of regulation that will come from that that gentleman, that organization that got the prime vendor. So they would tell you what you would need. The state would tell you they want it. The prime vendor would tell you, you know, whether you need to have product liability insurance, whether you need to have gap, anything you need, because they are the one that receiving that product from you. And so they are ultimately responsible for that product. And but they'll be also paying you also. But now a lot of times what happens, if you don't go through that, if you try to go directly to that person that got the DOD prime vendor contract, it ain't gonna work out. Because they got guys they already buy from. So normally with the state, you had to work through the Department of Child Nutrition. And that's where the procurement officer is located at, in that department. And then if they say, yeah, we want to buy local sweet corn, but then your prime vendor won't give you much problem then. They'll listen to you then. So start with your child nutrition, state child nutrition department, and then ask for the person that's over food purchase and distribution. And that's where you start at.
Thank you for that thorough response, Glenn.
Okay.
I'm gonna let Holly Thal, you have your hand up. Go ahead and unmute and ask a question.
Thank you. I just want to thank you all for your time today. This has been very, very informative. I've enjoyed this session. You mentioned the snack packs, that you provide some snack packs. Can you tell me more about what's in the snack pack and how does that process work?
Well, we do, you know, basically a lot of with most of that product that we supply for snack packs will be some additional. Okay, let me back up. We got a main line item that we grow ourselves. But in order to help support our food hub, we do snack pack. Now with the snack packs, we might do apple slices, orange slices. We may do mango slices. We do seedless grapes. We do broccolinis. We may do watermelon slices, cantaloupe slices, mango, not mango, but bell pepper, sweet bell pepper slices. So what we'll do, some schools want theirs in a 2-ounce pack, small pack, 2 ounces. Some of them want 3.5 to 4 ounce snack packs. So it all depends on what they want and how they want it packaged. And normally they give us an order every week prior to the week of us delivering it. And so it can range from anything from, like this week we did a peach snack pack. We did a nectarine snack pack, and we did cherry tomatoes, grape tomato snack packs. So basically, you know, what we do, when they put their order in, you know, we network with some of the grocery store that we partner with, and we bring the product in bulk, and then we bring the workers in, and they sit down and they go ahead and they prepare the snack pack for the school. And we normally pack them 100 servings per case. And we did today we're doing, I think, 4,500 snack pack that's going to go to a school district tomorrow. So it varies. It varies from week to week. You know, it could be like last week before last, we did raspberry snack packs. You know, week prior to that, we did blackberry snack packs. So it's all what the school want to order, and then we pull it in and pack and put it in the 2 ounces or 3.5 ounce snack pack. And these snack packs are served separate from the lunch program. It's served during the afternoon or else after school.
Great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we have a question from Lauren.
Afternoon. Thank you for sharing your stories. This is really inspiring. I had a question regarding the smaller packaging for schools. Often they like it to be in a certain package, a certain size. And if you had any challenge with that versus like a bulk type of order where it would be easier and maybe you'll save money on packaging, and just about the profit and the cost of materials and packaging for schools and how that works out for you.
Well, it's sort of funny. The smaller the package, the more money you make. So I like packing small. It's like a convenience store. You know, you pay for convenience. When you're selling to a smaller school district, a lot of time what we do, we come up with our own pack sizes as it relates to our mainline products. And so in that sense, we try to make it as convenient for the school as possible, because we know that most of the workers in the cafeteria are female, so we don't want them to pick up nothing heavy. So we try to make sure our case size it fits that. The way we control the profit margin that costs, we always do our numbers on that product before we offer it to a school. Even if a school asks them for something and we go back and the cost per service is too high for them, or else what they can pay is too low, we cross it out. And so what we try to do is look at each product, and if the school district is too, if the school district is too small, it's sort of funny again. You got to look at it at both sides. The hub and the farmer got to make money, and the school got to save money. And so once we look at a product and all three individuals can't win on it, we'll push that to the side and then let her get that from her full line vendor, the one that usually had a produce contract. And so, but once we find a product that we can make money on and they can save money on, and then we'll push that product for her to put on her cycle menu. But I like the snack pack program because they can pay more per serving. And so you can stretch it a lot further. It's labor intensive because you got to do a lot of that by hand.
Right.
But it pays more. I wish I had there's a lot of schools over here in Mississippi that really need to put in for the program that could help their kids, but a lot of the food directors don't want to do it because there's additional paperwork. But it sure would be nice if they would. But it's a choice, it's a grant they get. It's not mandatory. But I like it because it helps supplement what you can't grow. So I know I probably gave you 4 or 5 answers. I'm gonna let you
No, that was great. Thank you. That's helpful.
All right.
We have time for just a couple more questions. I see that Samantha, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, Glad this has been eye-opening. Thank you so much for your time and your resources and your knowledge. So I'm interested more about the workings of the actual farmer cooperative and the farmers that are involved in your cooperative. Do they have to pay a fee or do they have to provide a certain percentage of sales to help sustain the cooperative as a whole? How does that work? And then what's their benefit to being part of the cooperative? Is there insurance or group gap audits? How does that work?
All right. Now I'm gonna answer that question from a cultural psychology perspective now. So what I'm telling you, it may not work for the next person. I never believed in a traditional co-op. I don't see one, especially in the African American community, because a co-op to me is not a general template. You know, you got to design a co-op around the way people conduct business from day to day, culturally. All right. Now, so when we started in 1995, I knew the traditional co-op would not work. I knew it wouldn't work. Well, a lot of organizations said it would, but I wasn't going to waste my time trying it because I knew it wasn't going to work. So I took a model that we call a service co-op. Now, you all probably heard of RC&D Council that used to be with USDA called RC&D department. It used to be RC&D. Well, RC&D was based on a service organization, a service co-op, similar to electrical co-op in a sense. Long as your lights on, you have no problem with it. So basically, when we started the co-op, we looked at what the state of Florida required to have a legitimate co-op. And only required to have 5 members, legitimate 5 members. Okay, so what we did, we chose 5 individuals that had the same interest that we had in terms of trying to help small farmers. And that's what we made our board out of. Now, we don't require or don't encourage no farmer to join the co-op. We don't want no money from the farmer. We doing this because we want to do it. Because normally in our culture, once you take $10, that's $1 million worth of problem. Everybody want to be in when they in, out when they want to be out. So we allow them to do that. So if we can help Tommy with his operation, we help him at no cost. Because what we do, we take care of ourselves on the front end by growing and producing and doing other work that we need to do in order to be able to help him. So we need to, if the schools want sweet corn and it's going to benefit the co-op, the organization, and Tommy, well, then we go out and we'll procure that equipment out of the money that we generate. Culturally, it works better in the African-American community. Now, I know a lot of folks probably get mad with me, but when I say this, but we want every farmer to operate on their own level, and we come in and help the way we can help. And that way, we feel like we can progress faster and get more done with less confusion. So I can't, that's probably the answer that you can go back home and do nothing with. But that's how it is in my world that I live in. We just got to create a service co-op and provide a service for all the farmers that we service at no cost. Now, when it comes down to GAP, we're exposing the GAP certification and training that want to go through it. If they don't go through it, we keep close hands on them, and then we'll cover that. So we'll take the product from them, and we'll let their product go on all the GAP certification. That may not be by the book, but that's how we do it, though. Once the farmer tells us what he wants for his product, we take that and we break it down into per serving feedings. If it's too much for the food director to pay for it, we'll go back and tell him that he make the choice whether he want to lower his price or not sell it all. Because we'll explain to him, if he got to have $10 a bushel, and when we break that bushel down, and they're gonna make the cost 6 cents a serving, we'll tell him up front, well, she can't pay that. And when I say she can't pay it, that means we can't buy it and resell it to the school. And so I know it's everybody do business different. I mean, if you go to a Native American community, they do business different. And I know we all think everybody work the same. They don't do it. So if you gotta take culture into perspective when you do marketing. So some of the questions I answer for you may not be applicable to you. And I hope I got close to what you want to hear from a culture perspective.
No, it's fascinating. Thank you. Yeah, very good.
Okay, all right. Devonna know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, it's an important part because we all work from such different communities throughout the state. So there's not a set model, but your model is very inspirational, and I like that you did it through the service perspective.
Right.
It works for y'all.
Okay.
And did you have a question, Devonna?
So I did. It's not really a question. I guess I want you to elaborate more on it, Glenn. So for the other folks here, I have been working with Glenn off and on for years, over 10 years, I think, Glenn.
Oh, yeah.
And, I just have so much respect for Glenn and the work he does. And so one of the things that I've seen in the field, Glenn took me around one time to different schools that he bought from, and I rode along in their operations. And one thing I saw that was really impressive was that Glenn came about it from a problem-solving perspective. He asked the school food directors what they needed, what problems they were having, and then he found the way to solve that solution. And a lot of it is the processing. And so New North Florida Cooperative and the Holmes County Food Hub in Mississippi has equipment to process. And it's not always the fanciest, shiniest, brand new, most expensive equipment. It's equipment that works and works well, keeps food safety great, but it doesn't, I talked to a different food hub group that I'm afraid might have gone under now, and I won't name them, of course, but they were building the Taj Mahal of processing. And I kept saying, you might not want to build the Taj Mahal. Look at Glenn's example and follow Glenn's example. Glenn, I was wondering if you could speak more to the point of how you go in and talk to the food service directors and really solve their problems by, sweet potato sticks were one of the things that always stuck out in my mind from years ago. I don't know if you're still doing sweet potato sticks as snacks for kids.
We still doing sweet potato sticks.
So how you help the food service directors solve their issues that they have by your business and your processes.
Yeah, what we looked at, when Michelle Obama was in office, they came out with increasing the number of orange and green you had in your meal pattern, and a lot of the schools were struggling with the color orange, and so what we did, the two things we introduced to them, and it took off, was the sweet potato sticks and of course the butternut squash. A lot of those items they couldn't get through their regular vending process. If they could, it was very, very expensive. And so we was already doing sweet potato cubes. And so I said, well, let's try sweet potato sticks. And so a lot of the food directions that we were working with incorporated sweet potato sticks into their menuing process, whether it's steamed on the salad bar, and that increased their orange color in their meal pattern. And same thing with the butternut squash. So some of them do the sweet potato souffle with the fresh sweet potatoes, rather than have to order them from their vendor. They'll get them fresh and make their own souffle. And they started serving more of the butternut squash also. So like Devonna said, a lot of times you got to be in the bushes peeping out and trying to see what opportunities are being created politically, and then see how can you move in on it on a local level, because sometimes the product might be out there, but it's too expensive for a lot of the school system to acquire. And I think that's why a lot of your rural school districts always get beat up pretty bad on the selection that they serve. But when you got a small school district, say you might have an entire school district with 400 kids in it. And you might be like in Arkansas, I was working with one school district. They were so small, they actually make their grocery at Walmart. And so, but it limits them on what they can serve, because Walmart not going to order a handful of stuff for them, and a distributor is not going to drive 200 or 300 miles, for one case of broccolini and one case of let's say mangoes. So what we try to do is try to fit in what we can get in as relates to being able to grow or produce a product that would help their meal pattern, but it won't break the bank though. So that's
so fun for me to see y'all again. See you, Glenn. I haven't seen you in so long, and still hear great work you're doing. Thank you for everything.
All right, well, I appreciate it too, Devonna, and then you hang on in there. We're gonna hook up again eventually.
Soon, I hope.
Okay.
Great. Well, we're all out of time, folks. So just join me in a collective applause. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Glenn, for your time. It was super informative. We really appreciate you just sharing all of your knowledge and information with us all here today.
Okay, we appreciate you all having us too.
Thank you all.
Great.
You be well.
Okay, take care, Devonna.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So we are going to move into our breakout sessions, but we acknowledge the last hour we covered a lot of ground, so please take the time that you need. But we're going to transition into our second breakout sessions for the day. Following that, we'll be concluding the workshop for day one. But again, I just encourage you all, take your time you need. We'll start the breakout session process now, and you'll meet then. But yes, take the time that you need right now.
Great. I can chime in and sort of reorient us back to the trainer action plan. And so glad we were able to hear from Glenn and Tommy. That was great. And I know we kind of are sandwiching the panel in between the trainer action plan and breakout group. So as we're sort of mentally transitioning back to that conversation, and yeah, like Tomas said, feel free to, take care of any needs you might have as we transition to the last part of the day. So we are together for the next half hour or so still to wrap up the day. So I had just talked about our trainer action plan and, wanted us to sort of have that framework as we went into our next breakout session. So you can see what's being shared on the screen here is I think Jamboard number 4, and it's showing the building your training team. So that's one of those content buckets or sort of checklist buckets in the trainer action plan. And we wanted to start with supporting training teams and thinking about, who is on your team potentially, who is in the room today, and who do you know of in your state that might be a good fit. And really thinking of it through this framework of the 4 modules, right, based on content. So whether it's on the trial nutrition program and procurement side, or if it's on the product development and growing for school side, the producer sort of component, and sort of identifying where your gaps are, who do you need to find to fill in the gaps, et cetera. So that's really what we're going to spend our second breakout today doing. So we'll be looking at both Jamboards 4 and 5 today. And of course, just acknowledging, I think folks are probably at different places in the Jamboard, depending on how much you got through this morning. And so, if you feel like you're not on Jamboard 4 yet, that's okay. There's going to be a lot of space throughout the week to sort of catch up and cover topics as needed. So with that, I'll let Tracy take us away. And I believe we had about 15 minutes scheduled for this breakout. And we can sort of feel that out as we go, but we'll keep folks updated with a warning in terms of when we're coming back together to sort of share out and wrap up for the end of the day.
Heading back, and as we conclude today, if you could just think about what new understandings do you have right now? What are some of the new ideas that you have right now coming back from your breakout sessions after hearing from Glenn and Tommy, and after all of the coverage that everyone has shared today? What are some of the ideas that you have sort of buzzing on your heads right now? And of course, feel free to unmute or share in the chat.
I have kind of a question and a comment. I don't know what it is actually. It's forming in my head. So when it comes to creating statewide collaborations, it takes time and it takes resources and it takes some point people to be able to foster that connection. From the training materials that you have provided us, and I guess my overall understanding of the end goal is that our state networks are able to offer these trainings statewide. What is the timeline, your ideal timeline of that happening, with it in mind that it takes time to make this happen?
Yeah, I mean, like we've kind of touched on, we want the timeline for you all to be best for your specific state. And we want to be able to accommodate, and we can accommodate an overlap in some of those trainings. So if you want to sort of hit the ground running, that is certainly something that can happen. But also if you're wanting to, you know, have a bit more coordination and, you know, maybe bring some new team participants who are not on the call right now into the fold, that could be certainly something you plan out as well. So it's there's no ideal approach, I would say, but you know, we want to ensure that it's ideal for you, specific to your state. All right, well, seeing and not seeing and or hearing any other questions. So lastly, if you could maybe indulge me, I'm going to be just asking a few questions, and go ahead and just give a thumbs up if it's a yes, or no response if it's a no. All right, so do you have a better understanding of the Bringing the Farm to School project and materials right now? Great. Seeing some cartoon thumbs and real thumbs. Good to see. And then next, have you seen a panel in action? And do you understand the purpose of the panel in local producer, in the setting of a local producer training? And then lastly, to wrap it up, have you met new people within your region, or have you gotten to know or just revisit some old friends? Great, wonderful, wonderful. All right then, folks. Well, tomorrow we'll be digging into the first half of the producer curriculum content, in the introduction, modules 1 and 2, and then spending some more time in our breakout groups, and then working on action plans and next steps then. So we'll be back here tomorrow. Be prepared for a lot of ground to be covered then. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today. We will see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Tomas.
Thank you.
Thank you.